But yeah, so if you don't mind, could you tell me a little bit about your background and your role in the academy, so that to where you're developing this talent overseas?
Uh, my role is I'm basically both head coach and sort of like an AD. It's just a different type of setup than what you have in the US, but it's a I run a government funded elite program where we get to cherry pick the best players in the whole country and try to develop them into being uh, top athletes that's going to win medals for our country, basically. And the good thing there's only one school like this in the whole country, so the competition is not that huge. But the biggest problem for us is that it's sort of restricted with spots. We only have 25 spots right now, so we don't have a huge number of players. So that's like the biggest problem. But so my job was to run everything and build the whole program and try to make Swedish American football better, basically.
Yeah, yeah. What's your background in the sport itself, and to kind of get yourself into this position?
I started playing back in 1989 after being an exchange student in Pennsylvania, where I got exposed to football, basically. So I got back home and just found a club and started playing. And I've been involved in football since then. And I've been trying to make myself better, both as a player and as a coach. And I've spent a lot of time both playing and coaching national team. And I've been to the States a couple of times and I coached a little bit at a D2 school and been to clinics and all that. So I mean, I've been around forever. This is what I love, and I have I really like the high school setup that we run right now, where I get to do everything. I'm the strength and conditioning coach. I'm the football coach. I'm their mentor. I'm their psychologist. You know, I'm everybody. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's the cool thing.
yeah, for sure. Tell me a little bit. I know you mentioned club team play. Do you still play as well?
No, I'm way too old. I'm pushing 50 right now, so the playing days are over. But I played for a while. Played for like 12 years, something like that. Started late, but I really enjoyed coaching. So that was my way of sticking around because this sport is just I love it. I love the depth of what you can do and all the different ways you can become good. And I really enjoy working with people and trying to make them understand and know what I know. And when it comes to strength and conditioning, it's really about helping young people perform
Hmm.
and chasing that dream and giving them all the tools they need to be good enough, really.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what y'all are doing with these kids in what does the kind of the day look like with schooling and then football, and then kind of how does that all mesh together?
We have football as one of our subjects in school, so they actually get a grade in football, and it's on the schedule. So we have practice every morning, Monday through Friday, on the schedule, and we have one afternoon classroom time. So we take care of both the physical part and the theoretical part in the afternoon, where we have meetings where we try to teach them to be not just football players but elite athletes. So we teach them everything from basic football 101 to strategy to psychology to leadership to anatomy, physiology. We try to teach them everything they need to know about being an elite athlete.
Hmm.
Uh, so that's the whole schedule. And the sweet thing about this is that since it's mandatory, they have to show up.
Mhm.
and we give them a grade in it, so it's kind of nice that way.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. So I think probably the question that a lot of people over here on this side of the pond that doesn't necessarily know much about what's going on internationally with American football, how popular is it in Sweden? How popular is it in Europe, if you can speak to that? And so how much of a draw is there not only to your academy but to watching the sport, following whether it be the NFL or college football? What's the reach of American football right now in your side of the world?
It's growing. It's really growing. I think everybody's becoming more and more Americanized with the access to all the American TV and all that. So um, it's really growing. American football is small in Sweden. We only have around maybe 4,000 players total. So it's really, really small. But we're like a team sport nation, so we're really good at team sports. So it suits us in a way. But it's really growing in Europe, and I know both in Europe and in Sweden, a lot more people start watching the NFL mainly because that's the easiest way to see football right now in the whole world. The college scene is not as international yet as the NFL, but there's a lot more people getting interested in college football and football overall. So
Mhm.
it's really, really growing, which is kind of cool.
So from well, let's start generally. We can narrow down into Theo from a recruiting standpoint. How many have you seen an uptick in the amount of kids from y'all's academy, and then just from Europe in general, who are getting college scholarships and getting recruited by schools in America and major schools in America?
Yeah, I, I I remember growing up and wanting to go to college, and basically everybody was laughing at me and saying, "Well, it's not possible. Maybe you can go D3 or JUCO. That's it if you're from Europe." But now we have kids from all over Europe making it to big time schools, and I don't think we are that much better prepared really, but we get a lot more exposure, and you get looked at with a sort of, the coaches, they don't laugh at you because you're from Europe. They sort of recognize that you don't really need to be an American to be an athlete. And if you're an athlete, well, you can help me win.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot easier for them to see kids. And then you have organizations like PPI, or there's a bunch of other organizations that help kids going on high school tours, or doing high school camps in the US, and mainly get exposure and being seen.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing also right now, I think there's some coaches that have been to the US a little bit, and understand what it takes to compete in the US scene, and they are a little bit better preparing the kids to perform at that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we've always had athletes. I mean, that it's not special, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There's soccer and hockey and handball. There's all kinds of sports all over the world, and if they want to play football, they're going to be really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't been one of the sports that you choose
Mm-hmm.
because it's not that big. But
Mm-hmm.
now with the possibility of actually going to college, get an education, we see young kids having that as the number one sport, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why they pick football.
So what does in general, again, like we'll narrow down to Theo in a second, but in general, what does the recruitment for a kid in Sweden from your academy, from Europe, kind of look like? Because I think everyone knows the model of college coaches here, seeing video, talking to high school coaches, getting to go visit that kid, or see that kid play. There's a model here, and that's just not necessarily feasible overseas. What does that kind of look like?
I think the biggest thing in Europe is trying to get on one of these recruiting services, basically, like PPI. I don't know if you know what it is, but they take kids and go to the US and do camps.
Mm.
That's huge. Beside that, I mean, there's kids are really smart, and they use Twitter, they use Instagram, they use social media to connect to coaches, to expose themselves to coaches. So today, I mean, you need to be smart that way to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a little bit of a change from the coach's standpoint too, that you're looking for not quite as much as a finished product as a football player, but you look for the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like coaches at every level. The college coaches say that the high school coaches doesn't know anything. They'll fix everybody to make them a football player. Same as the NFL coaches are saying about the college coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody needs the talent or the athlete that they can fix,
Mm-hmm.
and that you can sell from anywhere. Because in Europe, it's pretty hard to sell football and playing games because the competition is not that good. But you can run a 4.4. You can be 6'6", weighing 245, and move really well. And if the coach at a big time college can't make that kid into a football player, maybe he shouldn't be coaching.
Yeah. So have y'all had success before, Theo, with getting kids over to America? What's that look like for y'all's academy, and what's kind of the numbers of kids that you've sent over to be able to play college football?
Uh, it's really cool. I think this is our. We started 20. Well, I gotta think 2012. So I think we only had like 6 or 7 graduating classes so far, and we've sent one lineman to Temple, one lineman to Rutgers. We've sent a tight end to West Virginia, another O-line to Stony Brook, and we had 3 kids going on this tour right now with Theo and Thomas Collins and Lucas Simmons, who basically brought in around pretty close to 60 scholarship offers
Wow.
this summer. So it's really moving. We had one kid that got an offer from UMass, but he chose to stay at home because he didn't really want to go to college. He wanted to go to work instead.
Mm-hmm.
So we've had huge success, a lot more than we deserve from my standpoint. I mean, the kids are working their asses off.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a success story, and it's come way too fast. We wasn't really ready for the success.
Yeah.
I was planning on having my first offer after 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
but it took like 3.
Wow.
So it's ridiculous, and when we have so many good kids that if they could get exposed for real, it will be even more. It would be even more.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into it. Tell me a little bit about Theo. How did he come to y'all? And I know I actually got to talk to him a little bit, and
Yeah.
he said that he actually had a soccer background and a goalie background. How did y'all get to him, and what was his kind of development like from the get-go?
When we started recruiting him, the biggest thing I saw was that he was tall, and he had really good hands. And the thing I saw that stood out was that he was tracking the ball really, really well. He was a little bit scrawny and didn't really move that well, but he had length, which is always nice. So we ended up during our what do you call, like the camp, where the last camp where we pick all the players. We picked between him and this other guy, and it came down to, well, I think he's got a little bit more potential.
Mm-hmm.
So we picked Theo, and we just put him in the program and try to put some weight on him, and try to teach him how to move, really, to try to get more control of his body, and teach him how the body reacts and how the body organizes itself to be able to move, because he's so tall. He need that coordination, and he needs to understand how he got to work with his body to make it move that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a pretty long process to get him to move well. But right now, I mean, he's looking kind of like a receiver in a big body.
Mm-hmm.
So and it looks natural, but it's been 2 years of hard work try to get him to understand how to move and what to do and move to his strengths.
Mm-hmm.
So and this is the luxury we have at the school. We don't have any time restrictions. We can do as much as we want. And there's me and this other guy who's full-time employed doing this. And we got 25 kids, and we just dig deep and try to make every kid as good as we can.
That's great. I mean, and I talked with him and he seemed to agree that background playing soccer goalie seems to translate pretty well to kind of that tight end mentality and that tight end skill set with catching and following the ball in and everything.
Oh, definitely. No, and I think you're used to tracking the ball because we don't have too many sports in Sweden and Europe that you have to track the ball and actually catch it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more sports with your feet. So you don't use your hands that way. And as a goalie, that's perfect. We just the biggest thing with him being a goalie that he wasn't used to moving that much.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the thing. You try to get him to run and try to get him to move.
Yeah. So when was the point that you kind of realized that, yeah, maybe this was a guy who was on the fringe of making it in the tryout, but now, oh, wow, he's developed, he actually could be something. Was there a point that that kind of clicked that you thought, hey, this kid's really, really becoming something and he could be one of those guys that goes over?
Yeah. There's actually 2 points. The first interview we had with him, and he was talking about his goals and his desire to be good and where he wanted to go. That was the first sort of key that he really want to be good. And then his work ethic and the way he was taking coaching, he was really, really coachable. You tell him things and he'll really take it to him and go work on it and fix it. So there's talent there, but he was really making all the effort to fix whatever we gave him.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's really, really huge because a lot of people don't want to go through that. To be honest.
So how closely tied in were you with the conversations with Texas A&M, and do you remember when they kind of came into the picture as a chance for a place that he could land?
I was talking more to Theo about how to pick a school, not which one.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a lot about what is important and what I recommended him to consider. And I mean, the kid is really smart and is really mature, and he just doesn't want to go to college. He want to go all the way. So he's really planning for the long run, and that's unique about him because most people can't think that far being that young. They only think 1 or 2 years. So basically what I did is I'm just trying to give him grown up advice about what is important and how life is like in college and what's going to be tough and what's going to be easy. So he can get more info and pick a spot where he's going to be comfortable and he's going to be wanted where he's going to, where he can relax. Because these kids think it's all football. And I mean, for a period of time it is, but most of the time it's not.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned him being smart and things. What is he like off the football field? What's his personality? What kind of kid is he?
Geez, I think he's a little bit more mature than his age, but he's self-confident and not in a cocky way, but he really believes in himself and his ability, no matter what it is. I don't think he really needs to be popular.
Mm.
Like a lot of kids today, they need to be somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's big for him. I think he want to prove something to himself.
Mm.
That's the thing.
Mm.
So he feels a lot older than what he actually is, and you can tell when you're talking to him that he's a thinker. He's not bullshitting around. He's legit and he's true.
Mm-hmm.
What you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, and there's that when you talk about the adjustments that not only a kid in America would have to go to going and leaving home and going to college, but a kid overseas with this academy, if I'm not mistaken, he's it's kind of a boarding school style academy. He's living there on campus. Is that correct? Away from home. So there is at
Yep.
least some amount of that having already been away from home to take care of his business that he's had to encounter, correct?
Yep. Yeah. This is kind of like a prep school
Mm.
where we have all our kids coming in from all over the country and living in a dorm. And the biggest difference between US and here is that, well, we don't give them anything really. You know, they pay their own rent. They have to
Wow.
buy their own food. They have to cook their own food. We give
Mm-hmm.
them lunch. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so from 16 years old, they take care of themselves. They got to schedule everything to make sure they manage school. They take care of all the practice. They make it to, you know, all their appointments. And that's one of the big things for
Mm-hmm.
us. It's like they grow up fast because we force them to,
Mm-hmm.
and we really help them to do that. So for him, it's going to be. I know some other kids that are going to college, and basically what they say is that it's a different kind of shirt, a different color shirt. It's the same deal.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this for 3 years. It's just instead of saying Celsius, it's saying West Virginia or Rutgers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. I know this. I can do this.
Yeah, yeah. What when you say you kind of give a lot of these kids advice on what college will be like and what's America like, maybe culturally or just moving into this part of the world, what do you find is the most difficult part, or the most challenging part for your kids when they get over here, anecdotally?
Uh, Initially, I think it's just the American society is about taking what you want. If you want something, you have to actually take it. There's no security system.
Mm.
There is a security system, but it doesn't. It's not as good as we have.
Mm.
Which is the good thing here is that you don't really have to take it. You can sort of be laid back about it,
Mhm.
which is a pretty good safety net.
Mhm.
But you don't get that that society where you can make a shitload of money or you become a CEO in a couple of years. We don't have that. It's kind of slow cooking
Mhm.
instead.
Mhm.
So that's a big change for the young kids. They got to understand it's a different environment. So the American society is different, and it's going to be football is going to be that way. College life is going to be that way. Everything's going to be that way.
Mhm.
That's different. And then of course it's going to be a long way from home. You
Mhm.
can't just hop on the train and go back home. You gotta be comfortable with being a long way from home.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
Oh.
other than that, and then we talk a little bit about the football culture that is different. That I mean, you're important, but you're not. If you don't produce, well, yeah, there's other people.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, while over here, you don't. There are no other people.
Mhm.
You're the guy. So if you don't produce, well, we're gonna have to fix you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then if you will, I know you mentioned it at the start of it, but if you'd fill me in a little bit on what you talk about, y'all make these teams in order to win medals. What does that kind of international play structure look like over there within Europe in when you can play for these medals?
It's we're geared towards the national teams. So we're supposed to develop players to play in the Swedish national team, and that way they're going to play in the World Championships or European Championships, and that way they're going to win medals. The kids also play in a club system at home and play games that way, and we're trying to add games with the school where we can actually go and play other international schools, try to get some high quality games that are not national team games. But it's a different system, and we're sort of stuck in between. We don't play in a league. We just do exhibition games.
Gotcha. Okay. And then is there anything else that I forgot or wouldn't have known about Theo or about just football in Sweden or anything that I might not know about, but is interesting or feel like readers should know?
Wow. I don't know. No, I think we covered most of it. Probably the coolest thing right now is all the international kids making it to the college scene, and they're doing it really, really well. And it's a lot of things that I hear from coaches I talk to that I know in the US is that the European kids love the game. They just love it. While the American kids want to get scholarships. So it's business. So a lot of coaches love the European kids because it's a true high school kid again, but at the college level. So and Europe is going to be a huge market. It's starting to get there, but it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent.
Yeah. Was there a certain point or a certain technological advancement? I know you mentioned those like PPI and things like that. Was there a point where you saw that more college eyes were starting to look over towards Europe, or was it a real gradual process? Was it FaceTime or the ability to do that or something like that?
No, it felt like it came pretty quick a couple of years ago. And I mean, there's always been coaches that look to Europe, but they've been really few, not too many. I think it started with the high school tours that the kids actually came over and competed with the American kids, and they did really, really well. And that's one thing, but then you have some of the European kids coming over, and they're producing at every camp for a month. And that's kind of special because you can get lucky and have a good camp. But if you do it every other day for a couple of weeks, I mean, that's saying something. And I think a lot of coaches that went to all the camps saw the same kids produce the same numbers all over and over. And it really sort of struck something with them, saying, well, maybe these kids can actually become something. And then it only takes a couple of coaches to look for everybody else to follow.
Yeah.
And
Is there I know with an eye on the international scene with these international players, there might be one on a couple of, and so they kind of can fly under the radar from the American fan perspective, but from the international side of things, is there a country that is kind of on top right now that is sending more over, or is it still too early in the process? They're just kind of coming here and there from different countries.
I think Sweden is doing pretty good. Sweden, Finland, Germany, Austria is doing really well. Germany and Austria have a lot more players than we do, so they've been sending kids over. Then there's the occasional other country, but I think those are the four biggest ones right now. That's had a lot of success. And the Swedish and Finland, the Swedes and Finns have been sending a lot of linemen because we have a lot of big people. And there's always a shortage of linemen. So
yeah. Well, thank for giving me some time. I know it's interesting because it's interesting to watch how sport is kind of evolving to be more global, because if you're in America now, more so than in my entire life, everyone has a Premier League or Bundesliga soccer team. And that's
Yeah.
just the big trend right now, is to look outside the borders. And it almost seems like kind of the same thing, probably has to do with television rights and the ability to get some of the games over there and stuff. It seems like that's happening on the other side of the world too, coming back in towards America a little bit. And maybe it probably was even a little bit more advanced, because now you're actually starting to see those kids come over and play. Whereas, soccer, and I've always been a huge hockey fan. Hockey's been big, here with the Scandinavian players as well. But just a interesting dynamic of what sports doing globally.
Oh, definitely. And I've been telling our kids also that I think there's a window right now that's going to be easier as an international kid to make it to the U.S. because in wait, like 5 or 8 years, it's going to be tough because you're going to look everywhere for anybody. So it's going to be really hard, to make it, because now it's kind of novel to be European, and you can find a gem somewhere.
That's awesome.